Hi, and welcome to Meadow Ministries Church of the Nazarene. This is the 6 p.m. Wednesday night Bible study, and we are saturating in the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5. So a little bit of a recap of where we've been. We have talked about the book of Matthew, and we've talked about an overview of that book. We have talked about Matthew chapter 5, which was where we find the Sermon on the Mount. And we have done an overview of the Sermon on the Mount, the first of chapter 5 of the Sermon on the Mount, as well as kind of a big overview of the Sermon on the Mount all the way through chapter 7. So then now we are in chapter 5. We did an overview of chapter 5, and we talked about the introduction and verse 3, and now we are on to verse 4. So if you missed any of that and you would like to know what I'm talking about when I'm talking, go back and watch those. You can find them on our website, meadowministries.com, and go up to the Studies tab, and there is a playlist for the Beatitudes. So that's where you can find that. Also, you could go to our YouTube channel, Meadow Ministries Church of the Nazarene on YouTube, and like and subscribe to our channel. And you can find all of our videos there as well. We can find the messages and the worship focus. The worship focus is on the website, but the messages and the Bible studies are on both YouTube, the website, and on Facebook, our Facebook page. So let's just get started into Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, which is the second beatitude, which says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." So we had talked about each of these beatitudes start with the word blessed. And the way that this grammar of this word works in the Greek, it is more of a term of exclamation. So it's like blessed, like congratulations, or it's a term of congratulations, like blessed, you are blessed. So in the Greek, that's what it says, blessed. The word "are" that we've added in the English is not there in the Greek. So that's why I want to point that out. And in our description, if you look on Facebook at our description, it says "Blessed the mourning ones." So that's basically what the Greek grammar does, is it says blessed, and then it says the mourning ones, or the ones who mourn, for they will be comforted. So let's dig in. Let's go to our interlinear, which is a tool on BibleHub.com that we like to use, which gives us the Greek. It gives us the reference to the Greek dictionary, Strong's Greek Concordance, which is going to tell us the definition of our word. It tells us, this is the English transliteration, is what they call that. This is how you pronounce this Greek word down here in the black in English. So Rioi. I'm going to have to look when we go into the concordance and see exactly how that's pronounced, because in Greek, every vowel is pronounced. It's separately. It doesn't make like a OI in English would make the sound OI. It's not like that in the Greek. So here we have the English translation, and you can see that they have the word "are" in brackets because it's not there. We added that in English to make it sound better, probably. I don't know. Anyway, and then this is the grammar. And Greek grammar is, some of it I get, and some of it's way beyond me. So we do talk a little bit about Greek grammar, but we don't go really deep into it because it's just I haven't gotten there yet in studying Greek. And so that's going to have to come later, I guess, unless there's somebody else to point it out to me. So we looked at this word for blessed before, but let's look at it again. It is makarios, and means happy, blessed, one to be envied. And right here, Where is it? Fortunate. Macarios. Properly when God extends his benefits. So we're blessed. And when we go down here to, I'm just trying to find our thing. Blessed the man who. So this is like blessed. Who's blessed? Those who mourn. Those who are poor in spirit. So in congratulations, the reason why one is to be pronounced blessed is expressed by a noun or by a participle taking the place of a subject. So that's what it says in the explanation here. And so that is what's going on when we get back to our verse. Blessed, those who mourn, those who are poor in spirit. So that's that word. So when we go back and look at those, hoi is the next word, and it's those, and so that's just a plural. It's plural, and it's an article that goes with mourning. So basically that's where we get those who mourn, or the mourning ones. And so let's look up this word for mourning. Pentheo, to mourn or lament, or to feel guilt. And I think that all three of those usages kind of fit in this context, because we're grieving, but we're not grieving over the death. This is not the kind of mourning where we are grieving over the death of a loved one. This is not the kind of mourning where, I lost my job and I really liked my job and I got fired and now I'm mourning over the loss of that job. Or I'm mourning because something sad happened or something bad happened in my life. This is not the kind of mourning that this is. But I'd like to point out this. So this is a very strong word for mourning. Refers to manifested grief so severe it takes possession of a person and cannot be hid. So this mourning is very profound mourning, but it's not the kind of thing that you can manufacture. It used to be common in biblical days that if a family member died, you would pay women to come and wail and mourn for your loved one. And you wanted to have a lot of women just standing around wailing because it was just a cultural thing. That's what they did. And so that was manufactured, right? If you're paying a person to come and wail at a funeral of a loved one, their grief is manufactured. This is not that. This grief is deep and it's profound, and it's not something that we can control. It comes naturally as a consequence of something else, and it also cannot be hid. And so in the context of our passage, the mourning comes from, let me just go back here, the acceptance of our poverty of spirit. So it starts with congratulations, blessed those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So they're poor in spirit. So they have come to accept and be fully aware of their poverty in spirit. They're poor in spirit. It's complete poverty, having absolutely no resource. We looked up that word for poor, and it was a crouching beggar kind of poor. It was the poorest of the poor. You can't get any poorer than this. Complete and utter abject poverty or helplessness. And so when we come to see our helplessness and accept it and embrace it, then the mourning comes naturally. It is a natural outcome of that mindset or that that seeing and feeling and understanding and embracing of the poverty of spirit. So we realize that we are completely and utterly poverty stricken in spiritually, and that causes us to mourn. And so that is what is going on in this passage in the context. And so I want to look at a couple of scriptures that show this in action so that you can see it in the context of somebody's spiritual life and their spiritual walk. They see their spiritual poverty and then they mourn for that. And so we're going to go, first of all, to Isaiah chapter 6. Oops, I typed in 5. Isaiah chapter 6. So Isaiah had been serving King Uzziah, and King Uzziah had been his true king, and when it really should have been the Lord that was his king. And so Isaiah comes to this place of realization of who his true king is. So it says, verse 1, in the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and the thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. So here Isaiah has this vision of God seated on his throne, and he doesn't even see all of God seated on his throne. He only sees the train of his robe because it filled the entire temple. And in the what's the word I'm looking for? Symbolism of the Old Testament times, a king who had little power had a short robe, and the longer a king's robe was, the more powerful the king. And so this is a big statement about the power of God. His robe was so long that it completely filled the temple. Okay, so he has seen the power and the majesty and the holiness of God. He sees these heavenly creatures who are falling down. They're covering their feet and their faces and flying, and they're calling to one another, and they're calling out the holiness of the Lord. And when they call out the holiness of the Lord, the doorposts and the threshold shake and the temple fills with smoke. So this is a really strong experience that Isaiah is having of experiencing the presence and the power of the holy God. And his response then is, he says, woe to me, in verse 5. I cried, for I am ruined. For I am a man of unclean lips and live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. So when he contrasted his spiritual condition with the holiness of a mighty God, he saw his utter spiritual poverty clearly. And when he saw that, he cried out, he mourned, and he said, woe is me. He's a man of unclean lips, and he lives among a people of unclean lips. That's the condition of his spiritual poverty that he's recognizing up and against this holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty. So I hope you can see our Beatitudes in action in those verses. So I want to go to another verse, or group of verses, and this time we're going to go to the Psalms. And there's a lot of Psalms that we could go to, and You could go through the Psalms, and when you're reading your Bible and you're going through the Psalms, maybe something you might want to do is get a colored pencil or a special highlighter that doesn't bleed through. And something that some people do is they color code the scripture. So, for instance, they might something that is an attribute that extols an attribute of God, like the holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. That would be an attribute of God. They would color that. They would have a code that they figured out, color it a certain color. I think it would be interesting if you could go through these, like when you're reading the Psalms, and if you find instances of this crying out, this mourning that's happening, then you could color code that with a certain color. That would be, and then when you're reading it, it's going to really pop out at you. So we're going to go over to Psalm 119, verses 145 through 147. I'm going to have to go scroll because okay. This is a really long psalm. It's right in the middle of the Bible. So if you have an actual Bible you're looking at and you're trying to find it, just open up right in the middle. You'll probably be there. And I'm just going to, I think I'm going to change my translation. Okay. So here we have King David, and he is crying out to God, and he says, I cry out, this is starting in verse 145 of chapter 119 of Psalm. I cry out with my whole heart. Hear me, O Lord, I will keep your statutes. I cry out to you, save me, and I will keep your testimonies. I rise before the dawning of the morning and cry for help. I hope in your word. And it goes on. My eyes are awake through the night watches that I might meditate on your word. Hear my voice according to your loving kindness, O Lord. Revive me according to your justice. So here King David is, and he knows that he is spiritually poverty stricken. He is helpless. He can't do anything without the Lord. And he is crying out from with his whole heart. He's crying out to the Lord and for help. Hear me, O Lord. I cry out to you, save me. I cry for help and I hope in your word. So here is an example of King David mourning his poverty of spirit and crying out to God. And so this is what happens when we recognize our poverty of spirit and we accept that. We are spiritually poverty stricken, and that leads to the natural outcome of mourning, crying out, oh God, woe is me. It always leads us to Jesus. Every single time. That's what happens. And so I just want to say that you have to, if you try to only accept your helplessness or your spiritual poverty in one area of your life and not the other, those areas of your life where you accept that you are poverty stricken spiritually, then you mourn, those are the areas that you will give to Jesus. I will give him to them. You will say, here, take it. I can't do anything. If my marriage is crumbling and I can't do anything, and I know that I am without resource to fix it, and I cry out to God and I say, here, I can't do it. Take it. That's a very narrow part of my life that I am going to Christ with, that I'm accepting that I'm helpless in and going to Christ with. If it's my finances, I might cry out. I might realize that I'm helpless to do anything about it and cry out to God and say, oh God, help me. And in my mourning, I'm going to give that over to him. And so we don't. Now, I'm not saying that when you were faced with a marriage that needs saving, or finances that need fixing, or whatever the case may be, that you should not cry out to God. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to take the totality of our life and realize in all areas of our life, we are spiritually poverty stricken, and we need to mourn that fact, accept that fact, and let the mourning come. And when we mourn it, we give it all to Him, the whole thing. And when we do that, then He's going to come, and that transaction is going to be complete. And I say complete for lack of a better word, because I don't know what the right word to use in this matter is, because we will never be done being poor in spirit. Now, when we come and we give our poorness of spirit to Christ, and we mourn and we give that to Him, He takes that and He heals that and He makes it whole. But we're never done, because it's also a progression. It's like a baby being born, and that baby is complete and whole and perfect today. But in 6 months, he's going to be completely different. But he's still going to be complete and whole and perfect in that day. When he's a teenager, well, he's probably not going to be perfect. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's a progression. At the same time, there's a completion. I heard it described one time as if you were to take a sheet of paper, like this sheet of paper, and just start folding it up, and fold it up as small as you could possibly get it. This might take a second. Let's see how small I can get this piece of paper. It's a printer paper, so it's probably not going to go. You could probably get thinner paper and get it smaller. And if it was a lot smaller, it would be a much better example. So the first time that we realize that we are spiritually poverty-stricken, that we're helpless to help ourselves spiritually, we see this part of our life, and we see that we are helpless, and we mourn that helplessness, and we give that to Jesus, and He takes it and He washes it clean and purifies it and makes it complete and whole. So you can't go to Jesus and say, oh, I have this list of 100 sins. Here's 99 of them. No, you give it all to Him and He washes it. But here's what happens. Now He unfolds the paper. Right? So now suddenly I see this whole other area of my life that I am poverty-stricken. I am helpless. I have no resource. I need to give, and then I mourn that, and then I give it to Him. And He heals that, and He purifies that, and He washes it clean, and it's completed, and then He unfolds the paper. You see where I'm going with this? So now we can see more area of our life where we are poor in spirit. And that's going to continue. And I have a finite amount of paper. I eventually will keep unfolding this till I run out. There's no more to unfold. Not so with the Lord. He's going to just keep unfolding. And as He unfolds, we're going to see we're going to get new revelation of our spiritual poverty. So we're never going to move beyond having to accept the fact that we are spiritually poverty-stricken and without resource, and that we need His resource. And that will, as we see those things in our life, and as that realization it comes front and center in our lives, we will never stop mourning the fact that we are completely poverty-stricken and without resource, and giving, and that will lead us to give that over to Christ. And so of course, there are a few more steps in there, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it means to be meek next week. Verse 5. Yeah, blessed are the meek. And so this comforting that he's talking about here, when we're poor in spirit and we realize that we are poor in spirit and that we need the Holy Spirit to come and be our resource, that's when we become the kingdom of heaven. And the mourning we will be comforted in that he will come and there will be healing and forgiveness and that entrance into the kingdom. And so that's the comforting that he's talking about. So we're going to go on next week. We're going to talk about the next progression. This is all a progression, and that happens in a progression, but it also kind of all happens simultaneously as well in a way. And so we're going to get deeper into that as we go. So make sure that you are focusing this week on blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. If you have the time and the inclination, go into Bible Hub, look up that word for meek and see if you can find the picture of what it means. And we will come back next week at 6 o'clock on Wednesday night, and we will talk about it. And so until then, we do have our regular message on Sunday morning, live streamed on both Facebook and YouTube. You can find us on YouTube, Menno Ministries Church of the Nazarene YouTube channel, or the Menno Ministries Church of the Nazarene Facebook page, or you can go and find us on mennoministries.com. And there are links on mennoministries.com to both the YouTube channel and the Facebook page, as well as some of our other social media pages. And so if that's an easy way to find us. So we're having the regular 11 o'clock service message from Pastor Bob, Sunday morning at 11. Sunday night at 6, we are having another house church meeting here at the parsonage, 6 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. And if you need more details on that, we do now have a calendar of events posted on our website, mennoministries.com. You click the events tab, and there's a list view, a month view, or a weekly view. There's several different views. There's a list that is going to come up as. If you want to see the calendar, just click month and it'll show you the month for the calendar. I have our next 2 house meetings on there, as well as camp meeting that's coming up in July. So you can find that information there, and we will see you next week. God bless.